Hello, everybody. This is Mark from Simple. I'm here to welcome you to our webinar on Facebook and Instagram, recruiting on Facebook and Instagram. Apologies for that. As you'll notice, I'm not Stephanie Stamparts. She's unfortunately ill today, so I have the honor and privilege of taking over, and I hope I won't disappoint you in doing that. Maybe if you can. And there you go. My one of my nieces is already kind of saying hi. Hi, Katja. Welcome. Maybe just to get the practical details out of the way. Can everybody just confirm that you can hear me and you can see me properly? So we know that we have the technical issues sorted out. Okay, it looks like that's working fine. Petra hears me. That's always great to hear. So does Yolanda. Okay, good. So that's it. Let's start then with the presentation. Let's share the screen here. I'm just going to go here and start with showing you the presentation which we've prepared especially for you. Okay, I think you can see my slides on the screen now. Again, some practical points. You'll have the slides in front of you. I'll be talking and taking you through that. In the chat, you can either give comments or questions. There's a specific question tab also to put your questions there. And please, please, please ask me as many questions as you have. I want to make this interactive so we can all learn from this. And we can also maybe learn what you're looking for. What are the questions you're having on this subject? Obviously, there will be a Q&A at the end, but the more questions you ask while I'm giving this webinar, the better it will be. It's quite a lot of people here from all over Europe, actually, so that's great to hear and see. So let's start. What will we be talking about today? Obviously, as you would expect, we're going to be talking about why you should recruit on Facebook and Instagram. I'm looking at the question at the same time. Cheyenne van der Bosch, is it possible to add someone extra? I think it is. I think maybe ask Hammer, my colleague, who's also following, to put the link in the chat that you can share with your colleague so for him or her to attend. Him, her, or they. We are obviously non-gender biased here at Simple. So first part is why should you recruit on Facebook? Then, very important, what should you pay attention to when preparing? How do you set up a campaign? And then finally, very important, because that's the beauty of Facebook, you'll have lots of data, lots of possibilities to measure your results. It will also guide you in doing that. What are we not going to be talking about is about free and organic recruiting on social media. So yes, you'll have to spend money, right? Facebook obviously is a platform where if you want to have full visibility, if you want to use the targeting capabilities, you'll have to buy advertising. So all the benefits of free and organic, which are very low, by the way, and just to put a number on that, if you have 1,000 followers on your Facebook page, when you post something, only 3%, i.e. 30 people, will actually see that in their own timeline. So organic is not the way to go if you want to use this for recruiting. So we won't be talking about that. Whenever I mention that, I know I see some people dropping off in the timeline because they were hoping to find a cheap way to recruit, but unfortunately, I have to disappoint you. You'll need to be able to spend some budget. Second thing is we won't go too deep in everything on data-driven recruitment, analysis of data. We have a separate webinar on that, which you can also find on your website. You can join that. And finally, same answer there. We won't be talking about what is a great working ad, because that will be tackled, and it's already tackled in another webinar. Good. But without much or further ado, let's kick off. And maybe just 2 slides of background. We won't make the commercial talk about how great we are, but just to give you a bit of a background, our software actually helps companies to provide qualified candidates with a focus on passive candidates through targeted advertising on social media with a very user-friendly process. And just some stats here. We analyze 11 million data points per month, obviously with algorithm. We have about more than 6,000 campaigns now that we've put on air, only recruitment campaigns. So we have a lot of data from that, which we're more than happy to share, and all the learnings from that we'll share today. And as you can see, our customers, there's a nice mix of some international corporate customers, but also a lot of small and medium enterprises, companies 5 to 400 people, and about 10% of our customers are actually recruiters or recruiting companies who use our software to find candidates. Good. That's a bit of the obligatory commercial push from our end, but that's where it stops, I promise. Now, let's say why you should recruit on Facebook. And maybe to get start with the first poll, which I will launch now. I would just be interested to see how many of you have already actually published a paid recruitment campaign on Facebook. And very important, when we talk about Facebook today and the rest of the webinar, we talk about the Facebook platform. So it includes obviously Facebook, Instagram, Facebook Messenger, and then the Facebook Display Network or the Facebook Audience Network, which is an affiliate network of Facebook. So let's have a look at some first results here. Okay, nice. Right, so a big part of the audience has already launched a paid recruitment campaign before. That's great to hear. That's normally we have a 50-50 split, but that's good to see. There's going to be interesting information for both of you, whether you have already it or not, but we'll give some top-line information, and then we'll also go deeper into what objectives you should choose, conversion, traffic, etc. All of that will be revealed in the next couple of 40 minutes. Good. Why should you recruit on Facebook? I think most of you really know the classic networks like Monster, Stepstone, LinkedIn. You'll be able to reach active job seekers through those networks. But if you're looking for people who are not actively looking for a job, which is depending on the research you read, it's about 80% of the market. Those people say, look, I'm not actively looking, but something nice comes along, closer to home, interesting brand, better work-life balance, why not, right? And these are the people which actually you can easily reach through Facebook, Instagram, and the affiliated networks. Now, before we kick off, I think it's important that we all start and talk about the same terminology, nomenclature, to put a fancy word on that. If we talk about recruitment funnel, which all of you or most of you will be in recruitment, you'll know you have candidates who apply, you go through a selection process, and then a couple of those candidates will actually get an offer and be hired, depending on how many people you're looking for. What's important is if you start looking about thinking how to use Facebook, that actually you'll use a similar approach. You'll have people who are not even aware of you as a company, as a brand, and you'll be able to reach those in the discover phase. As you move them through the funnel, you'll be actually able to engage them, right? And the idea is, and the principle is, to actually attract them, to show them the vacancy once they have already seen a couple of items about your company. Right? That's the ideal way of doing that. Ideal from a customer or from a candidate perspective, because he has been already seen some context, has been receiving already a bit of a framing of your company, but also very important, we'll talk a lot about that later on, that it helps you to collect data. What kind of people click on your advertising? What can you learn from that? Do they click again? Can you retarget them? And so on. Okay, so I'm just gonna look at the chat here because I see some chats coming in with people who don't seem to see me. There's nobody on stage now. I can actually assure you I am on stage, right? So I hope that will be solved. And thanks, Amber, for stepping in there giving some advice. So that's a funnel. That's basically the basic principle of how we'll basically take you through developing your campaign. Now, we've all heard about the amazing possibilities of Facebook to target the right people, and it is very true, right? I might say. And what's important is that you have so many possibilities to actually do the targeting that we always advise to think a bit about whom you want to target before you actually open your Facebook Business Manager. Your Facebook Business Manager is a tool that you will use to actually target and set up your campaign. Again, we won't go into detail on that because that will be a separate webinar because there's quite a bit of detail involved to that. So we'll stay top line for now. The obvious one when you talk about targeting is your location, right? Facebook will give you very nitty-gritty tools to co-location, even to 2, 3, 5 kilometers if you would want that. We would advise against that. Again, maybe to explain that, you'll need to find the right balance in your targeting between what is it you want, and obviously you want people probably living, only a bike ride away. That's understandable. But the more restrictive you make your targeting, the less possibilities you give to the Facebook algorithm to actually start testing and seeing which candidates or which users are most interested in your ad. Again, we'll talk about that later on, but you need to give Facebook some room to actually do some tests and see what the best candidates are to be shown your recruitment advertising. So for location, as kind of a rule of thumb, I would say don't go more narrow than 20 kilometers around the company or the areas of the company. You can experiment a bit with that, depending on how far you think people will be able to travel. For maybe low-paying jobs, you go to 20 kilometers, maybe 30. Higher-paying jobs, you might go higher, depending on the traffic situation around your location. So that's kind of an obvious one, is the location where you're hiring for. The second one is interests. And here it's going to be important about thinking about what might your ideal candidates be interested in. Facebook does not allow you, like LinkedIn does, to actually say, I want to reach people with a master's degree who speak French, English, and a bit of Spanish, right? You don't have that data available or those targeting capabilities available in LinkedIn. What you do have is a lot of interests of that particular audience you can target on. And this is actually very interesting because these interests are based not on declared interests from the user, but actually on their behavior, right? Give an easy example, and I'll use that maybe a bit later on also. If you're a car leasing company, right, in the insurance business, you're looking for people to work for you, you probably know that most of the people working in your company are interested in cars, right? That might be an interesting interest to use, right, in your targeting. And what Facebook will do is start targeting people who have actually visited a website about cars or have interacted with content that is dealing about cars or transport. So the interest is a very important part in getting your setup right. And it's very valuable because it's based on actual behavior of the users/visitors. Now, again, you might see me looking on my second screen, just hoping there might be questions. If I'm going too quick, if I'm not going quick enough, if there's things I explain that are not clear, please don't hesitate to drop that in the chat or in the question box. And the last element is data. What we mean with data is that it's very important to actually use the data from your previous campaigns, from your website, to actually improve your future campaigns. And this data set is very important because that actually will enrich you, will help you make your future campaigns even stronger. Again, we'll talk a bit about how to collect that. We'll talk about Facebook Pixel and what you can do to install that. The data is very important. And I think even because I know we're winding up the year, you might be attending this webinar because you have some plans in 2022 to do some recruitment advertising. Start collecting data today, right? You cannot be early enough with collecting data about the kind of visitors on your website. So that's going to be an important point about start building up your own data set, because that's data that you own, that you can use, your competitors will not have. Okay, I have a question from Steph. Can you select a job title and years of experience in Facebook Ads Manager? No, Steph. As I mentioned, these are not things you mentioned you can actually use. That's one of my points earlier on. So you have to use the interest of what you think is your target audience to do that. And as I mentioned before, do this analysis before you open up Facebook Ads Manager. So sit together with your team, with your colleagues, and saying, what might people that we're targeting be interested in? Good. All right. When I talk about collecting data, I just want to show you a very brief overview of our tool. We've been doing this for 4 years, so we have collected actually already a lot of data, and that will allow us, right, based on that data, to actually, if we would be looking for a barista, to look at what is data from similar functions in the hospitality sector that we have done, right? Years of experience, and we can use that as data to actually build better campaigns in the future. Again, you can also use location here, as I mentioned. We're, ideally looking for barista in New York, and then that you can actually do this kind of setup. This is actually in a real screencast of our software. So if you would like to use our software doing that, you're more than welcome. Question from Katja: is the targeting based on behavior on Facebook or on the entire internet? This is where it gets scary, Katja. It's actually based on, in as far as they can, on the entire internet. So Facebook, and we'll talk about the Facebook Pixel, is actually also tracking what is happening on other websites because they need that data to make your campaigns better. So there's actually a reason for that. And for a large part of other internet sites, which are not even affiliated with Facebook, they are indeed able to see what their users are doing there, how much time they spend, etc., right? Again, like I said, this is where it gets scary. This is all done on an anonymous basis, right? You will never know who is visiting your website, who has that behavior. So you cannot look up specific people. On an aggregate level, it helps you to improve your targeting. Good. Now, as we're preparing to go live, you've done the thinking about who do you want to target, what images are you going to be using, and how will you do the setup. What's then going to be very important is to start thinking about who is your competition for these same candidates. And you have to kind of keep a very open mind in this, because the competition on Facebook competing for those candidates are not the same as your competitors at the company level. Let me continue with the car leasing example, right? Because I have no better example jumping to at this moment. You might think, because you're in car leasing or in insurance business, leasing business, financial business, you might think, look, my competitors might be other insurance companies, other leasing companies. Maybe if you say maybe other banks are looking for the same profile, that might be true. But if you're going to be targeting people interested in cars, actually Volvo might also be your competitor, because Volvo, when they are advertising for one of their new cars, they will also be targeting people with an interest in car in that specific region. And what's very important is that when we'll talk about what is the cost of Facebook advertising, your cost is actually defined by how many people are competing for the same kind of audience. So keep in mind that if you go after an audience interested in cars, you will have quite a bit of other competitors targeting the same audience. So important, just keep an open mind when you're defining what is your competition on Facebook. There's an interesting tool actually to do that, and I want to make this a bit interactive by showing this to you. I'll just go live to let's see, but I'm afraid that you're seeing a blank screen. So let me do the sharing again here. So let's go to an interesting tool, which is called Facebook Ads Library, right? And what this allows you to do is actually look at any company who is advertising, that is advertising on Facebook, and to see what ads they are currently running. So I'm just going to ask you, are there any companies you would like to see advertising from? And then I'll type that in the tool here. While I drink, okay. Volvo, why not? Let's take this example to the end. Let's do all ads, and let's do Belgium. There you go. As you can see, my internet is quite slow at the moment. I'll just click on Volvo USA, and they have 0 ads. Obviously, I have 0 ads because I'm looking in Belgium. But my computer is not working with me at the moment. And thankfully, Amber has already. There you go. Let's try this again for Volvo. God, the internet is slow here. I'm not sure whether that's only with me or also with you. Let's give it one more second. And no, okay, that's unfortunate. Apologies for that. It looks like the bandwidth of showing you my slides and at the same time showing the Facebook Ads Manager, it's not going to happen. So that's a pity. Let's go back to the slides. Here. All right. Is this working? Are you seeing the slides again? I hope you do. Thanks, Sam, for sharing that link. So please play around with it. But what you could see, this is an example, if you put in simple, you can actually see the advertising that is being shown. You can see that they're putting that on Facebook, on Instagram, on any other channels. So it's a good way to actually understand what your competition might be doing and showing as advertising at that moment. Now, what's important, use that tool, that Facebook Ads Library tool, to actually start looking around on what do recruitment ads look like, what is my competition using, what should I be working on. But of course, we have some tips also for you based on the learnings we have done, what we have from our past campaigns. And the first one is use authentic pictures, right? And I know a lot of companies have very corporate approved pictures. It's never a good idea to use that. It's even a worse idea to use stock images, right? Don't forget, you're in a channel, you're on a network where people are used to seeing pictures from their friends or their family, actually real pictures of real people. You should do the same, right? So what you can see here is a couple of examples. I think the picture on the right is an interesting one because everybody would see, I'm sure your marketing department would say, look, we cannot show people who are kind of partially with their back to the camera. The composition of this picture is not good enough. Screw it, right? This kind of pictures, authentic pictures, are what works well, right? And it's actually what you should be looking at to use and represent the company you're hiring for. because people will be attracted to pictures showing real people, to have an understanding of what is this kind of company I might be working for, right? Second point is uniform communication. Keep in mind what you're seeing now is the advertising part of what we're showing. Keep in mind that if you click on this, right, people would be expecting to see the same colors, the same branding, the same pictures ideally on the page where will they be landing. So have a uniform communication that people, when they click on it, they don't see on our page different colors. They might think they've clicked on the wrong link, they'll be gone, and you won't be able to reach them again. And then finally, Facebook best practices. Just Google that. There's a lot of tips and tricks that Facebook will give you on what are the kind of images you should be using. But, and bear with me for a second, within those Facebook best practices might not necessarily always be working for what you need. So it's going to be very important to test that. I will explain in a couple of slides how you can do that testing. Okay, now there's some journalistic data, as I mentioned, about using authentic pictures, and then there's also very important, just the technical data, right? You're going to have to upload pictures in the right format, in the right way, otherwise it's just going to look very ugly once you go live with your campaign, and that's never a good thing, because that means you'll not be seen by enough people. These are the pictures, and again, you can also find those, or these are dimensions. You'll be happy to find them once you Google, but keep in mind, once you start looking for pictures, that's going to be an important part of getting it right. And again, also there, if you would want to use our software, we'll help you with that. We actually made it as easy as possible. Again, let's imagine you're looking for a barista. You'll just be able to paste the text you need in there. You can upload your logo. You can upload a picture. You can just go and have a look at what pictures you have on your hard drive, on your cloud to do that. And our software will also automatically put a banner on there, as you can see, wanted with the function name. So people immediately know that this is a recruitment advertising. And will also, within our software, to allow you to do what's called cropping, because Instagram obviously has a different format than Facebook. All of those changes you can easily do in our software. There's no need for Photoshop or Canva or other software to do that. Everything is built in. And also, very important, our editor will also allow you to test different pictures. Because as I mentioned, it's going to be important to do some testing, maybe a drawing versus a picture of a well-known barista, or even a video, right? Keep in mind, testing is where it's at, and all is well, because I knew which slide was coming. I'm going to show you a first example of this, right? I'm going to show you and explain you A/B testing. What is A/B testing? Is where you actually test two campaigns next to each other to understand what will generate the most clicks, right? And I'll start with a short poll. So this is an example of an ad we've done for one of our customers. As you can see, picture on the left is the people smiling, and the picture on the right is people actually with a mask on and a iPhone or a digital smartphone with their smile on, which we thought was actually a fun picture to use. Now, I would like to know, and let me pull up the poll here. You should see a poll on your right-hand side. Which picture do you think scored the best in this exercise? I'll give you 10 seconds to do that. All right, there's a clear preference for the picture on the right. That's what we thought, but unfortunately, we were wrong, right? The picture on the left was working a lot better, and not only the amount of applications that we received, but also the cost per application. Cost per application is an important metric to keep in mind. don't just look at clicks or impressions. Actually, the thing you're paying for is your applications, because that's what you're interested in. So it's important to start measuring that. And what we saw is that with the picture on the left, it scored a lot better on the amount of applications and the cost that we have with that. This principle of A/B testing is really, really important to understand, because you can do A/B testing on many things. Here, we show an example where you can do it actually on the picture, but you can do it on the title, i.e. on the function title. You could test sales consultant with retail expert, right? To understand which function name is working better, right? You can actually change the text on top of the picture. Just important, when you do A/B testing, only change one variable at a time, right? If you have different variables, it's not going to be possible to draw conclusions. So it's important when you do this testing to only change one variable. I'm just going to check, because I noticed there's some questions on the right. The uncanny valley, it's Sebastian. It's a good point. Cheyenne, your question, how do you do this testing? There's a couple of options. Facebook will allow you to test two ads against each other. I will explain a bit later in how that setup works. So you can do it in Facebook, or for instance, you can use software like Simple to set up that A/B testing automatically. All right. And then there's another question from Steph. Can you set up Facebook campaigns for every job function, e.g. engineers? Very good question, Steph. Maybe to go a bit deeper into that, there's a couple of elements which are very important on reaching the right audience. There's a targeting, we talked about that. There's the optimization of your campaign, but also the quality of your campaign and what you're saying. It's very important, and we still see a lot of our customers doing that and making that mistake. And they will tell in the advertising how fantastic they are as a company. That's not something that's working anymore, right? You actually have to start thinking about what's in it for the candidate. What are the messages that you can send to the candidate on why they should click on this advertising? And that could go from, look, 1 week of training per year, right? We can work with this kind of technology if you would be looking for engineers. So that's going to be very important in getting that right, and understanding what will your target audience be looking for. How can you, for instance, reach and convince an engineer who's now doing a similar job in another company? Why should they be clicking on your advertising and doing that? We have several examples of where it's working for even aerospace engineers, which is quite of a niche function, right? So if you get your messaging right, if you get your targeting right, and those two are kind of communicating with each other, you can actually target pretty niche functions. Now, having said that, a bit of a health warning and a bit of being very transparent. There's quite a bit of people out there who are so much in demand that will get 5 phone calls from a headhunter every day, right? Senior developers, maybe even some senior salespeople. Those kind of functions, because they're so used to actually getting a phone call, it's less possible that you're actually able to convince them to click on another advertising, because they know, right, that they have enough opportunities. Now, having said that, we have a couple of interesting companies. One of our partner companies, customers, is Bioelectric. They work in sustainable energy, right? They have a beautiful story to tell of actually helping the environment by working at this company. If you have a strong story like that, then in that case, you'll be able to reach very difficult to reach audiences, because for them, we have reached senior developers and they have clicked on the advertising. So it's a good question, but I want to play it back to you. start thinking about your messaging and how you will build up your campaign. Good. That's about A/B testing. Now, the A/B testing, as I mentioned, you can do it for picture versus picture, but you can also test videos. Facebook is very keen on pushing their users, pushing their advertisers to use video. We always make a video for every campaign, but it's very important. But you will never know what's going to work better. We have campaigns where we A/B test video versus picture, and picture wins. And 3 weeks later, we do another A/B test for a different vacancy, and there the video will win, right? So don't just say, I need a video, and the video will work best. Test. I hope. I won't go and mention that too long anymore, but testing is very important. Good. Now, how do you set up this campaign? And Cheyenne, this is partially going to be an answer to your question. What's important to understand is that Facebook works completely differently than publishing something on Indeed or on job board or even on LinkedIn, right? Because it's advertising, right? And there's 3 elements to an advertising campaign that you need to take into account, and that's important to get it right. At the first level, at the campaign level, as it's called, you will have to tell Facebook what is it you want, right? i.e., are you in the discover phase of your funnel, as we mentioned before? And do you just want your employer brand campaign to be seen by as many people as possible? What you then say, you tell Facebook, say, Facebook, look, show this to as many people as possible. It's called an objective reach, right? On the other hand, if you say, no, I want people to actually apply for my vacancy, then your objective will be conversion, right? Conversion is the Facebook term of what people would call an application, right? So it's very important already at this level to understand what is it you want to do with Facebook and what is it that you want to do with your campaign. Now, on the second level below that, that's where you're going to define what is the audience you're going to be targeting, right? We talked about targeting already. So this is again where you will say, I want to target people 50 kilometers around London with an interest in cars, right? That's it. That's my target. You'll define that at the ad set level. And with channels, we mean, you can say, look, and I only want to use Instagram, which is people, and my budget will be 50 euros per day. That's what you'll define at your ad set level. And finally, below that, you will define your actual ad. That's where you will upload your picture, where you will upload your text, where you will upload any other text links to your campaign. And this, Cheyenne, this is, for instance, where you could say, this is where you would put one ad against the other, right? And that means if you have one ad with, let's say, smiling people, and the other one is the people with a smartphone, this is where you do that. You make different ads, but they will be within the same ad set, and Facebook will then start running that test and give you the results. Now, just checking for another question we have here. Can you do this with a company login, or do you need a personal login on Facebook? Okay, you will need Facebook Business Manager, right? The Facebook Business Manager has to be linked indeed to your company page, right? But then you can invite people to actually enter and use Facebook Business Manager, and those people can log in with their personal login, right? So a bit of mix with both, because in Facebook Ads Manager, you will have to connect your credit card, right? Because obviously all this advertising will need to be paid. And the Facebook Business Manager will have to be connected to a credit card. And I would advise you not to use your personal credit card to pay for your company advertising, unless you're really in love with your company. And then I salute you, right? If that's the length you go to for putting advertising live. But use Facebook Business Manager, connect it to the corporate credit card, and then you can invite your colleagues or yourself with your personal login. That is, by the way, another advantage of using software like Simple, because for Simple, we will do everything, setting up the Facebook page, setting up the Facebook account for you, right? The only thing you need to do there is actually enter your advertising copy, and everything else our software will do for you. Okay, good. Now, the big question mark, obviously, with Facebook is how much will this cost, right? This is very different. If you put a vacancy live on LinkedIn, you get a fixed cost. I think it's about 36 euros per day that it costs. By the way, we don't think that's good money. That's good use of your money. And most of you have LinkedIn will probably agree with me. The cost in a Facebook campaign is not something you can actually define upfront, right? And why is that? Because it's kind of not in your control, right? There's no fixed price for putting advertising on Facebook. Now, why is that? And I think it's important to understand that the cost of reaching a certain candidate is actually defined, as I mentioned before, by how many people want to reach the same target audience. So you're going to be bidding with your competitors, and again, as I mentioned, competitors are not just the competitors of your company. The second element is also what is called estimated action rates, i.e., how strong is your campaign? If you have a great visual, people click on that a lot because it's a nice visual, right? That means you have good action rates and your campaign is performing well. Now, what's very important to understand is that you can just put a picture there of a cute dog, because we all know people like to click on pictures of cute dogs as a kind of clickbait to get people to your vacancy page. That might seem like a good idea. Unfortunately, it's not. And why is that a bad idea? Because Facebook will track what is happening. And with Facebook, when they notice if people are clicking on your advertising, they're landing on your vacancy page, and after 2-3 seconds, they will click away. Facebook will then say, you're actually promising something in your advertising that you're not delivering once people come onto your page, i.e., right, this is not good advertising, and therefore either you'll be shown to less people or the cost of your advertising will increase. And that's really something that's very, very important to keep in mind. This is a totally different ballgame than clicks coming from Indeed, right? Because you're going to be paying 60 cents or €1 for a click coming from Indeed, independent on whether you're applying it or not, independent on how long you're staying, because Indeed is not even able to track that, right? Facebook will track that and will kind of actually make that impact your pricing. So that's really important to keep in mind. And the last point is actually kind of overlapping here. What's the user value? How much value are you giving to your user with your advertising? Now, the estimated action rates also, by the way, are taking in mind what have you done in the past and how good was your advertising in the past. Now, I realize, especially if you're new to Facebook advertising, about 40% of you, this is quite complicated. So what we've done is actually we've developed a little tool to help you with that, which is called Financial Facebook Formula. Amber will probably paste that link to that in the chat later on. And that's actually going to help you in thinking how you should set up your Facebook campaign. Because to help you in understanding, first of all, how many applicants do you need? That's up to you, right? If you're saying, look, this is a kind of vacancy that's very hard to fill in. I'm looking for a lawyer with tax experience. You're probably only going to be getting between 5 to 10 applicants, right? That's probably going to be your target, right? Obviously, if you're looking for people in retail to help you out in your shop, you might be looking for 20, 40 candidates. The second point is then, what's your conversion on your vacancy page? So once people will land on your vacancy, do you have an idea of how many people, how much percentage of those people will actually click to apply, right? That's conversion rate, right? So to put numbers on there, if you have 1,250 people coming onto your vacancy page, you only have 50 people applying, then your conversion rate is going to be 4%. 4% is a very, very good conversion rate, right? I mean, then that means you have a very, vacancy is well written, it's visually attractive, it's an interesting job, and people tend to like to apply for these kind of jobs, right? And the last number to keep in mind is to start thinking about, of the people who will see your advertisement on Facebook, how many people will click on that to actually come to your vacancy page. So we're taking a bit the other way around, right? So an example, so make an assumption how many people click on your Facebook advertising, and as a rule of thumb, this will be between 0.2 and 1%. That's kind of typical conversion rate on Facebook advertising. How many people, once they've landed on your page, how many people actually apply, i.e. convert? And like I said, think about 1 to 4%. And based on that, how many applicants you actually want to apply. And if you then use the formula, which we'll share with you, it will give you an indication of what the budget is that you need to run your campaign, right? Now, you can also, of course, cap this. You can put a maximum limit on the amount of money you're willing to spend, either on day by day or on a total budget. So you will never spend more than what you want. But just make sure you've put the right caps and the right breaks in place, because Facebook Business Manager is quite complicated, right? Just make sure that what is called lifetime budget, that you have a maximum lifetime budget, so you're sure you won't have any nasty surprises once you see your credit card statements. Okay, good. We've talked about setting up your campaign, about defining your budget. Now, what's important, we talked about, what we want to talk about now, is how you can make sure that actually your campaigns become better and that you actually learn from that. And very important here is to understand that the quicker you start collecting data, the better it will be for you, right? Now, the important tool for that is called the Facebook Pixel. And I'll just put a poll in there to understand how many of you actually have the Facebook Pixel installed. So the poll is live. So you can just answer that. Okay. I think there's some feedback in the chat. Let's have a look at that. Okay. So most of you are saying, what the hell is the Facebook Pixel? Good. We're kind of anticipating that question. That's why it's in the poll. Well, the Facebook Pixel is a small amount, it's a bit of code, programming code that you put on your website. So I can actually start tracking who is actually visiting your website. Those of you actually already using Google Analytics might be using something similar, but this is specifically to allow Facebook to understand and track who has clicked on your advertising on Facebook, and then what is happening once they come onto your website, right? This code, for instance, is also used to start understanding the consumer behavior on different websites. I think that was an earlier question from Katja. Now, why is it a useful code and a useful tool to use? Because it will allow you to do retargeting. You You've all been there. You've been shopping for shoes on Zalando or a specific book on Facebook, and then you go to another website and you see the advertising for that, for those shoes or for that book. That's called retargeting. It's a very powerful tool to actually get people back to your vacancy page. It will also help you to track conversions or applications, to really understand and to help Facebook understand what people have applied on your vacancy. Because if you track that, and if you send back that data to Facebook, it will allow Facebook or the Facebook algorithm to actually start optimizing campaigns and to look for similar people. And the last, and probably even most important part, it will help you to allow and build audiences, right? I gave you an example of how we use it. If you have 10 or 15 vacancies in the hospitality sector, right, then you will know that all the people who have landed on the vacancy are actually they are probably interested in the hospitality sector. I'm explaining very quickly, very broadly, but these audiences that you can build will actually help you in the future to optimize your campaigns. Good. So the Facebook Pixel, as I mentioned before, even if you want to start campaigning or recruiting a couple of months from now, start putting a pixel onto your website now, as quick as possible, because it's going to start collecting data, and that's data that you'll be able to use later on. Good. Now, what are some tools you can use for that? One of the best tools that everybody who's interested in data, you should start using Google Analytics. Google Analytics, it's not an easy tool to use, but it will help you to understand how people, once they land on your vacancy page, how long do they stay, where are they coming from, how quick do they click away, and you can start building some data, but you can also start doing the analysis, understanding what you should improve on your page, on your website to make it better, right? This is, by the way, a completely free tool, right? This is Google Tag Manager. Google Tag Manager is maybe a bit more advanced, but thanks to Google Tag Manager, you'll be able to actually put Facebook Pixel or other pixels onto your pages. You can put a different pixel on your vacancy page and a different pixel on your company pages, so you can actually start tracking where are people coming after they've seen a vacancy. Do they go to my company page to understand what my company is about? So Google Tag Manager is going to help you to set that up properly. And finally, if you're really serious about understanding data, analyzing data, you're going to need a tool like Google Data Studio to actually help you collect all that data and build some nice reports with that. So if you're serious about data-driven recruitment, first of all, go and download our data-driven recruitment webinar, because we'll go in detail into these tools. Start using Google Analytics. Okay, just checking in the chat there. The retargeting, this is called automatically, no catcher. You'll have to actually set it up, and you'll have to build an audience, as it's called, a retargeting audience. So it's going to be a different audience under your campaign, where you will tell Google to actually retarget those people. We actually would advise to build a separate campaign, because your objective for retargeting is going to be different, but I might be complicated it a bit. Basically, you do that setup in the Facebook Business Manager. Good. I'm just checking for other questions. Yes, maybe finally, and unfortunately, I'm not going to risk going live with this, because I'm afraid that my internet connection is not going to be on. I'll just quickly try it once. Let's have a look here. But I'm afraid you're not able to see my screen. Oh, yes, you are. Okay, great. Well, this is actually a live view, a live demo of our software where we're going to really help you setting up your campaign, right? You can actually, there's a checklist which shows you what you have done already, what you should do, as I showed before. If you're looking for a barista, in this case, you've done the targeting already, you've set up the advertising, you can actually build your vacancy page in our software. So you can actually build how it will look like for people once they click on your advertising. And what's even more important is that within our software, you'll be able to manage candidates. So you have a kind of a Kanban board where you're going to be able to actually look at different candidates. You can see their details. You'll be able to mail with the candidates. Let's click on that. You'll see the answers they've given in the chatbot, right? So this is the chatbot we use. You can actually make some notes on these candidates. Everything actually, this is a real one-stop shop to help you not only to attract candidates, but also to manage them, to actually track in here also what campaigns are published, what is working well. Our software will do the management of this ourselves. So it's really going to be helpful, at least to help you understand how you should be setting up your campaign. I'm just going to go back to my slides now. Let's check here. Again, if all goes well, see my slides again. And maybe just to explain on that, I've shown it to you live. What's the beauty of our software is that it will, of course, make it very easy for you through the setup, as I've shown you, but also our algorithm in the background will run A/B testing. It will actually optimize your campaign based on how many candidates you'll have, where the candidates are coming from. So all the setup I've been explaining till now, it's all done for you by our beautiful software. We'll put a link in the chat with the free offer to use our software for free for 2 weeks. So please go register in that software. You'll be able to use it for free for 2 weeks. You can set campaigns. Obviously, if you're going to start using budget for Facebook, you'll have to pay for that. We're not that generous that will pay for your advertising budget, but the software is completely free for 2 weeks. And by the way, if you register, you'll also be in that software. You'll be able to download the other webinars, to look at our white paper, to see more detail about the data-driven recruitment webinar, etc., etc. So if I haven't convinced you yet on why you should use that free registration, I don't know what could actually convince you even more. Okay, so let me just double check. There's no more questions coming in here. We'll share we'll share after we wrap up here. You'll get the link to the presentation and the recording automatically in your inbox. Okay, let's pause maybe for the Q&A. Are there any other burning questions you would like to ask? Yes, Katja. The other webinars, just register in our software, and on the left-hand side at the bottom, you will see the Simple Academy. And in the Simple Academy, you'll be able to actually see all the other content that we have available. Okay, just to end maybe, again, don't hesitate to ask questions, go ahead. If you have questions later on, these are our details, and as I mentioned, Stephanie unfortunately wasn't able to join. I'm sure she's joining in spirit. Would have loved to be here. But if you want to send me or Steph an email, here are our details. Connect. Correct, and not completely unbiased comment coming in there on the most useful webinar. So let's end with just asking one more poll on how useful this was, and also on what you would like as the next webinar or as another topic to be tackled in our webinars. All right, so let's have a look at the poll. Well, apparently it's very useful, so happy to hear that. All right, I think we can wrap up here. The one in red, love that name. Okay, people, thank you very much. Thanks for sticking around. I hope it was interesting, but apparently it was. And good luck with setting up your campaigns on Facebook and Instagram. Cheers. Bye-bye.